Did Elvis ever record a song that made fans question everything? Could the king of rock and roll actually release music that split his fan base down the middle? Throughout his career, Elvis Presley released hundreds of songs that captivated audiences worldwide, but not every track was universally embraced. Behind the glitter of his gold records and the screams of adoring fans, certain recordings sparked fierce debates among Elvis enthusiasts that continue to this day. From experimental styles to questionable production choices, these divisive tracks reveal the complexity of an artist constantly evolving in the public eye. Number 8. Old Shep, 1956. Was Elvis really crying while recording this song? Could the rock and roll rebel truly be brought to tears by a ballad about a dying dog? Old Shep stands as one of the most polarizing recordings in Elvis Presley's extensive catalog, particularly because it appeared on his 1956 debut album Elvis Presley, alongside rock and roll numbers like Blue Suede Shoes. The stark contrast between this sentimental ballad about a boy and his beloved dog and the hip-shaking rockers that were making Elvis famous created immediate division among his rapidly growing fan base. The song itself had deep personal significance for Elvis, who first performed it at age 10 in a youth talent contest in Tupelo, Mississippi. This childhood connection might explain why he insisted on including it on his breakthrough RCA Victor album, despite his new image as a rock and roll rebel. The recording features minimal accompaniment, just Elvis's voice and Shorty Long's piano, creating an intimate, almost uncomfortably vulnerable performance for listeners expecting more energetic material. For many early fans, drawn to Elvis's rebellious energy and sexuality, Old Shep felt like a betrayal, too sentimental, too traditional, and far too reminiscent of the country music their generation was trying to leave behind. The song's inclusion puzzled rock and roll purists, who couldn't reconcile this tearjerker with the hip-swiveling performer who was scandalizing America. Yet, for others, particularly fans who appreciated Elvis's versatility beyond rock and roll, Old Shep revealed the depth and emotional range of his voice. They pointed to the authentic emotion in his delivery, with some even claiming Elvis shed tears during the recording session, though sound engineer Bill Porter later disputed this claim. These supporters saw the song as evidence that Elvis wasn't simply a rock and roll novelty, but a multifaceted artist capable of genuine emotional connection across musical styles. The controversy around Old Shep established a pattern that would follow Elvis throughout his career. The tension between his rock and roll image and his desire to explore more traditional, sentimental material. Years later, when rock music evolved toward harder sounds and more sophisticated themes in the late 1960s, Elvis's willingness to record heartfelt, old-fashioned songs like Old Shep became even more contentious among fans debating his relevance. Today, Old Shep remains divisive, with some listeners hearing authentic emotion and others cringing at its unabashed sentimentality. The song's placement on his groundbreaking debut album ensures it will always be part of discussions about Elvis's artistic identity and the contradictions that made him such a compelling cultural figure. Number 7. In the Ghetto, 1969. Could Elvis really tackle social issues? Was he genuinely concerned about urban poverty, or just exploiting a trend? Few Elvis recordings have sparked more intense debate than In the Ghetto, the Mac Davis penned social commentary that became a major hit in 1969. Released during the turbulent final year of the 1960s, this story song about the cycle of poverty and violence in America's inner cities represented a significant departure from Elvis's usual material, dividing his fan base along both musical and political lines. For many, fans in the Ghetto represented a welcome evolution in Elvis's music, demonstrating his ability to connect with contemporary social issues at a time when protest songs and socially conscious lyrics dominated popular music. Supporters praised his emotive vocal delivery and the genuine compassion that seemed to inform his performance. The song's success, reaching #3 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart, appeared to validate this new direction and suggested Elvis could remain relevant in changing times. However, other longtime fans viewed the recording as a calculated attempt to capitalize on trendy social themes, a betrayal of Elvis's earlier, more authentic rock and roll persona. These critics pointed to Elvis's privileged lifestyle at Graceland, far removed from the urban struggles described in the song, questioning whether he had any genuine connection to or understanding of the issues he was singing about. Some even accused producer Felton Jarvis and Colonel Tom Parker of pushing Elvis toward the song primarily to rehabilitate his commercial appeal after years of declining relevance. The musical arrangement itself further divided listeners. Recorded during the famous American Sound studio sessions in Memphis that revitalized Elvis's recording career. In the Ghetto featured a lush, string-laden production style that some fans embraced as sophisticated while others condemned as. The backing vocals by the Jordanaires, a staple of Elvis's sound, struck some listeners as inappropriately pretty for a song addressing such grim social realities. Perhaps most controversially, In the Ghetto raised uncomfortable questions about race and cultural appropriation. Some critics argued that Elvis, as a white artist with a history of performing music rooted in black traditions, was once again profiting from black cultural experiences without truly understanding them. Others countered that Elvis's own impoverished childhood in Tupelo, Mississippi, gave him unique insight into economic hardship, if not specifically urban poverty. The legacy of In the Ghetto remains complicated. While the song is now considered one of Elvis's signature recordings and a highlight of his artistic comeback in the late 1960s, the debates it sparked about authenticity, cultural appropriation, and commercial calculation versus genuine social consciousness continue to this day. For Elvis scholars, the song represents a key moment when the king attempted to engage with the changing social consciousness of his era with both musical and cultural results that still divide listeners 50 years later. Number 6. A Little Less Conversation. 1968. Did Elvis predict dance music's future? How could a nearly forgotten movie song become a worldwide hit decades after his death? Originally recorded for the 1968 film Live a Little, Love a Little Less Conversation was a relatively minor entry in the Elvis catalog until a 2002 remix by Dutch DJ Junkie the 40th transformed it into a global phenomenon, reaching #1 in over 20 countries. This remarkable transformation from forgotten film track to 21st century club anthem sparked intense debate among Elvis fans about musical legacy, authenticity, and posthumous tampering with an artist's work. The original recording coquetted Elvis's attempt to keep pace with changing musical trends of the late 1960s. Written by Mac Davis and Billy Strange, the song featured funky guitar, brass accents, and lyrics that were suggestively direct by the standards of the time. The up-tempo number represented Elvis trying to move beyond his ballad-heavy movie soundtracks towards something more contemporary. Yet upon its initial release, the song made minimal impact, reaching only #69 on the Billboard Hot 100 before disappearing from the charts. When Junkie the 40th, Tom Holkenborg, remixed the track in 2002 for a Nike World Cup commercial adding electronic beats, loops, and dance music production techniques. The response from Elvis's fan base was immediately and dramatically split. Younger fans, and those open to contemporary reinterpretations, celebrated the remix as proof of Elvis's enduring relevance and adaptability. They pointed out that the remix introduced Elvis to a new generation and returned him to the top of the charts decades after his death. Traditional fans, however, were often appalled by what they perceived as a desecration of Elvis's artistic intent. They argued that electronically manipulating Elvis's voice and adding production elements he never approved represented a form of exploitation that dishonored his legacy. For these purists, the success of the remix symbolized style over substance, reducing Elvis to a novelty and ignoring the artistic context of the original recording. The controversy extended to Elvis Presley, Enterprises, and the Presley estate, which had authorized the remix. Some longtime fans accused them of selling out Elvis's legacy for commercial gain, while defenders noted that introducing Elvis to younger audiences helped ensure his music would live on rather than becoming a nostalgia act for aging fans. Music critics found themselves equally divided. Some praised the remix for highlighting the forward-thinking elements that were already present in the original: Elvis's rhythmic vocal delivery, the funk-influenced arrangement, the modern lyrical approach, while others condemned it as a gimmicky appropriation. Perhaps most interestingly, the explosive success of the remix led many fans to rediscover the original version, prompting debates about which rendition better captured the essence of Elvis as an artist. While the original recording demonstrated Elvis's willingness to evolve with contemporary trends, the remix represented how his music could continue evolving even after his death. Both perspectives offered valid interpretations of Elvis's legacy, yet they remained fundamentally at odds. Today, a little less conversation exists in popular culture in both forms, with different generations of fans often preferring the version they encountered first. The song's dual identity reflects broader questions about how legendary artists should be remembered and whether their work should be preserved exactly as it was created or allowed to evolve through new interpretations. Few Elvis recordings better illustrate the tension between preserving a musical legacy and keeping it alive through reinvention. Number 5. If I Can Dream. 1968. Could one song save a career? Did Elvis truly believe in the message of racial harmony? Or was it just good business? If I Can Dream emerged from one of the most pivotal moments in Elvis Presley's career, the closing number of his 1968 NBC television special, later known as the '68 Comeback Special. Written in the aftermath of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and Robert Kennedy's death, the song's message of hope and racial harmony represented a rare moment of social commentary from Elvis. Yet, despite its commercial success and critical acclaim, the recording has remained a source of heated debate among fans, critics, and cultural historians. Originally, Colonel Tom Parker had planned for the TV special to be a conventional Christmas show with Elvis singing holiday classics. Producer and director Steve Binder, however, envisioned something far more dynamic, a showcase for Elvis to reclaim his rock and roll credentials after years of formulaic movies. When Binder and jockey Walter Earl Brown proposed If I Can Dream as the show's emotional finale, they were taking a significant risk. The song's lyrical references to King's I Have a Dream speech and its plea for understanding across racial divides represented uncharted territory for Elvis. The recording itself is emotionally raw, with Elvis delivering one of his most passionate vocal performances. According to multiple witnesses at the session, Elvis demanded take after take, pushing himself to vocal extremes rarely heard on his records. The dramatic orchestral arrangement, complete with soaring strings and a gospel-influenced choir, signaled a musical gravitas that stood apart from both his rock and roll classics and his lightweight movie songs. The reaction from fans created immediate division. Many celebrated "If I Can Dream" as proof that Elvis could transcend his image as a teen idol and movie star to deliver something genuinely meaningful. These supporters pointed to the genuine emotion in his performance and the courage it took to release a song with such clear social implications at a time of intense national division. Yet other fans questioned Elvis's authenticity and commitment to the song's message. Critics noted that throughout his career, Elvis had largely avoided political statements of any kind, raising doubts about whether "If I Can Dream" represented a genuine artistic statement or merely a calculated career move at a time when social consciousness was commercially viable. Some pointed to Elvis's complicated relationship with black music and culture, suggesting the song represented a convenient appropriation rather than a genuine commitment to racial equality. The musical style of "If I Can Dream" further divided listeners. Its orchestral grandeur and anthemic quality appealed to fans who appreciated Elvis's more mature, adult-oriented material. Yet, rock purists sometimes dismissed it as overproduced and sentimental, lacking the raw energy of his 1950s classics or the soulful grit of the other performances in the '68 special. Perhaps most significantly, "If I Can Dream" sparked ongoing debates about Elvis's place in American culture during the turbulent late 1960s. While artists like Bob Dylan, the Beatles, and James Brown were making explicitly political statements through their music, Elvis had remained largely silent on the social issues transforming America. "If I Can Dream" represented either his belated entry into the conversation or, as skeptics suggested, a safe, generalized statement that avoided taking specific political positions. The song's commercial success. It reached pound 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, arguably validated the artistic risk, but it didn't resolve the questions about Elvis's sincerity or cultural relevance. Today, "If I Can Dream" stands as both a highlight of Elvis's later career and a lightning rod for discussions about authenticity, social responsibility, and the complex relationship between commercial calculation and artistic expression in popular music. Number 4. Suspicious Minds, 1969. Is this Elvis's greatest song or his most overplayed hit? Why would a producer add a fake ending to a perfect recording? Suspicious Minds stands as one of Elvis Presley's most celebrated recordings, widely considered the crown jewel of his 1969 artistic comeback. Yet despite its commercial success and critical acclaim, few Elvis songs have generated more heated debates among fans and music historians, with controversies ranging from production choices to questions of artistic ownership. Recorded at American Sound Studio in Memphis in January 1969. Suspicious Minds represented Elvis's return to his hometown music scene after years of Hollywood isolation. Written and previously recorded by Mark James, who had limited success with his own version, the song's themes of distrust and relationship tension resonated with Elvis, who was experiencing marital problems with Priscilla at the time. The recording session captured Elvis at his vocal peak, delivering a performance that balanced emotional intensity with nuanced control. The most immediate controversy surrounding Suspicious Minds involves producer Felton Jarvis's decision to add a fade-out and fade-in near the end of the song, a production technique that creates a false ending before bringing the music back for an extended outro. This unexpected element has sharply divided listeners since the song's release. Some fans consider it an innovative production choice that builds dramatic tension and extends the emotional catharsis of the song. Others condemn it as an unnecessary gimmick that interrupts the natural flow of an otherwise perfect recording. According to session musicians, Elvis himself was not present when this edit was made, raising questions about artistic control and intent. When the song became Elvis's first #1 hit since 1962's Good Luck Charm, the debate intensified. Was the song successful because of or despite this unusual production choice? Beyond production controversies, Suspicious Minds generated debates about credit and compensation. Though American sound studio owner Chips Moman produced the original sessions, Felton Jarvis received the official producer credit, creating lasting tension about who deserved recognition for revitalizing Elvis's sound. Furthermore, the session musicians who created the distinctive backing track, members of the legendary Memphis Boys, felt they received inadequate compensation and recognition for their contributions to Elvis's comeback. The song's musical identity itself created divisions among Elvis's diverse fan base. Suspicious Minds represented a deliberate attempt to create contemporary adult pop rather than return to his rock and roll roots. While many fans embraced this more sophisticated sound as proof of Elvis's artistic growth, others viewed it as a calculated commercial move rather than an authentic expression of Elvis's musical instincts. These perspectives reflect a broader division between fans who preferred Elvis as a rebellious rocker and those who appreciated his evolution into a more versatile performer. Perhaps most controversially, Suspicious Minds raised questions about Elvis's creative agency during this crucial phase of his career. While the song represented a clear artistic triumph, critics noted that Elvis didn't write it, didn't produce it, and had limited control over its final form. This uncomfortable reality challenged the narrative of Elvis reclaiming his artistic identity during the 1969 sessions, suggesting instead that his resurgence relied heavily on the talents of songwriters, musicians, and producers. Despite these controversies, or perhaps because of them, Suspicious Minds remains one of the most discussed recordings in Elvis's catalog. Its commercial success, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and enduring popularity ensured it would become a signature song, yet the debates surrounding its production, authorship, and artistic authenticity continue to divide Elvis scholars and fans. For many, it represents both the peak of Elvis's vocal artistry and a perfect encapsulation of the complex questions surrounding his creative control and cultural relevance in the later stages of his career. Number 3. Heartbreak Hotel, 1956. How could a song about suicide launch a career? Did Elvis really want his first major label single to sound so weird and echo-drenched? Few debut singles for a major label have generated as much immediate controversy or lasting debate as Heartbreak Hotel. Released in January 1956 as Elvis's first single for RCA Victor after his transfer from Sun Records, the song showcased a dramatic vocal style and unusual production choices that sharply divided listeners from the moment it hit the airwaves. While its eventual success, #1 on the Billboard charts for 8 weeks, might suggest universal acclaim, the recording's distinctive qualities continue to spark intense discussions among musicians, producers, and Elvis aficionados. The song's genesis itself contains elements of controversy. Inspired by a newspaper article about a man who committed suicide, leaving only a note saying, "I walk a lonely street," songwriters Tommy Durden and Make Boranaxton crafted a bluesy lament far darker than typical pop fare of the mid-1950s. Elvis's decision to make this brooding song his major label debut puzzled many industry insiders who expected something more conventionally commercial. The most immediately divisive aspect of Heartbreak Hotel was its sound. Recorded at RCA's Nashville studio, rather than at Sun Records in Memphis, the session aimed to capture the echo-laden ambience of Elvis's earlier recordings. Producer Steve Scholes and engineer Bob Harris created an extreme reverb effect that made Elvis sound as if he were singing from the bottom of a well, or, more thematically appropriate, from the lonely end of the titular hotel. This atmospheric production polarized listeners immediately. For supporters, the cavernous echo perfectly complemented the song's themes of isolation and emptiness, creating a sonic landscape that matched Elvis's dramatic, almost theatrical vocal delivery. They praised the willingness to create something so sonically distinctive for a new artist debut on a major label. Critics, however, condemned the production as amateurish and excessive. Country music stations initially rejected the song as too bizarre for their plutinates, while some pop radio programmers considered it too dark and unconventional. Even Elvis's drummer, DJ Fontana, later admitted his initial reaction was negative, famously saying, "It was awful. It sounded like he was in the bathroom and I'm playing drums in the next room." The song's blues-influenced style created additional controversy. While Heartbreak Hotel represented a commercial breakthrough, incorporating elements from both country and rhythm and blues traditions, some purists from both genres viewed Elvis's approach as an inauthentic appropriation. Blues traditionalists pointed to the theatrical aspects of his delivery, while country fans objected to the urban sensibility of the arrangement. Perhaps most significantly, Heartbreak Hotel sparked the first major debates about Elvis's artistic identity and intentions. Was he deliberately challenging commercial conventions with his choice of material and production style? Or was he simply following his instincts without a calculated plan? These questions about Elvis's level of artistic control versus commercial calculation would follow him throughout his career, with Heartbreak Hotel serving as the first major focal point for such discussions. The song's massive success, despite its unorthodox qualities, further complicated the discourse. When it sold over 1 million copies and topped multiple charts, the recording industry had to reckon with the possibility that commercial appeal wasn't limited to scene-hide, conventional productions. For many young musicians hearing Heartbreak Hotel, the song's commercial triumph, despite its weird atmospheric quality, suggested new possibilities for creative expression within popular music. Today, music historians generally recognize Heartbreak Hotel as a ground-ringing recording that helped establish Elvis's artistic credibility and commercial viability simultaneously. Yet, disagreements persist about whether its distinctive sound represents a stroke of genius or a production mishap that succeeded despite its flaws. These competing interpretations reflect broader divisions in how fans and critics understand Elvis's artistic legacy as calculated rebellion, intuitive genius, or lucky accident debates that began with the strange, echo-drenched sounds of his first major label release. Number 2. Are You Lonesome Tonight? Spoken word version, 1969. Did Elvis deliberately ruin his own classic? Was he laughing at his own song, or sending a message about his artistic imprisonment? Among the most polarizing Elvis recordings ever released, the infamous laughing version of Are You Lonesome Tonight, from his 1969 Las Vegas performances, has sparked fierce debates about professors of celebrity. Originally captured during his August 26, 1969 midnight show at the International Hotel, and later released on the 1980 album Elvis Aaron Presley. This version features Elvis dissolving into uncontrollable laughter during the song's spoken word section, creating a recording that some fans treasure as a rare glimpse of spontaneity, while others condemn as an unprofane treasure as a rare glimpse of spontaneity. The standard version of "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" had been one of Elvis's biggest hits after his return from military service, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1960. Its formal structure, with a theatrical spoken recitation in the middle, represented Elvis at his most polished and mainstream. The contrast between this carefully crafted studio recording and the chaotic live version could hardly be more stark. The breakdown begins when Elvis reaches the spoken portion of the song, where he recites lines inspired by Shakespeare's "As You Like It," comparing life to a stage play. After delivering the line, "You lied when you said you loved me," Elvis appears to be struck by something amusing, possibly his backup singer. Cissy Houston's facial expression or his own thoughts about the melodramatic lyrics. Whatever the trigger, Elvis begins to chuckle, then laugh outright, stumbling through the rest of the recitation while barely able to speak through his laughter. For many devoted fans, this moment represents one of Elvis's most genuine and humanizing performances. They point to the infectious quality of his laughter, the glimpse of the real person behind the carefully managed image, and the rare moment of unscripted spontaneity in a career increasingly defined by formula and routine. These supporters treasure the recording precisely because it breaks through the polished veneer of Elvis's Vegas-era performances to reveal something authentic. Critics, however, view the recording very differently. They see it as evidence of Elvis's declining professionalism and respect for his audience, a performer who couldn't be bothered to take even his signature songs seriously anymore. Some point to the recording as a turning point when Elvis began treating his legacy with contempt, foreshadowing the increasingly erratic performances of his later years. For these listeners, Elvis's laughter seems directed not just at the song, but at the fans who paid to hear it performed properly. The debate becomes even more complex when considering the context of Elvis's career at that moment. The 1969 Las Vegas engagement represented both a triumphant comeback and the beginning of a grueling performance schedule that would eventually contribute to his decline. Some analysts suggest the laughter might reveal psychological stress rather than simple amusement, a momentary crack in the facade of a performer trapped in an increasingly demanding and repetitive career path. Adding to the controversy, Colonel Tom Parker and RCA initially kept the recording unreleased, considering it an embarrassing mistake rather than a valuable document. Its eventual release years after Elvis's death sparked fresh debates about whether such outtakes and imperfect performances should be part of his official discography, or if they diminished the dignity of his legacy. Perhaps most intriguingly, fans continue to disagree about what Elvis found so amusing in the first place. Theories range from forgotten lyrics to inside jokes with the band to existential recognition of the disconnect between the romantic ideals in the song and the realities of his own troubled relationships. This ambiguity allows listeners to project their own interpretations onto the laughter, further fueling the divisive nature of the recording. Today, the laughing version of "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" retains its power to divide Elvis's fan base between those who embrace its humanizing qualities and those who consider it an embarrassing lapse. That a single live performance of a song could generate such passionate and contradictory reactions speaks to Elvis's complex relationship with his audience, his material, and ultimately with himself, contradictions that become audible in those moments of uncontrolled laughter on a Las Vegas stage. Number 1. Unchained Melody. 1977. Can a performance be simultaneously brilliant and painful? Does this final masterpiece reveal artistic triumph or tragic decline? No Elvis recording generates more conflicted reactions than his live version of Unchained Melody, performed and recorded just weeks before his death in 1977. Released posthumously on the album Elvis in Concert. This raw, emotionally charged performance has become perhaps the most divisive entry in Elvis's entire catalog, with fans and critics sharply divided over whether it represents a final artistic triumph or a disturbing document of physical and vocal decline. By June 1977, when Elvis performed this version in Rapid City, South Dakota, his health problems were visibly apparent. Struggling with weight gain, prescription drug dependency, and various ailments, the 42-year-old Elvis appeared physically transformed from his earlier image. These visible changes make the audio recording impossible to separate from its biographical context. Listeners cannot help but hear it as a document of Elvis's final decline. The performance itself contains striking contradictions. Elvis, seated at the piano rather than standing at the microphone, begins tenderly, his voice initially controlled and expressive. As the song builds toward its climactic high notes, however, his vocal approach becomes increasingly desperate and strained. When he reaches for the song's famous crescendo, "I Need Your Love," his voice cracks and strains, revealing the limitations of his damaged instrument. Yet somehow, he pushes through to deliver the final lines with a raw emotional power that transcends technical perfection. For many fans, this version of Unchained Melody represents Elvis at his most authentic and emotionally compelling. They argue that the vocal strain and imperfections actually enhance the performance, infusing the song about longing and separation with the weight of real suffering. These supporters point to the courage it took for Elvis to attempt such a vocally demanding song in his compromised state, seeing in his effort a kind of heroic last stand, an artist refusing to surrender to his limitations. Others hear something much more troubling: a once magnificent vocalist reduced to shouting and straining, unable to control the instrument that made him famous. These listeners find the recording difficult and sometimes painful to hear, viewing it as evidence of exploitation rather than artistry. They question whether Elvis should have been performing at all in this condition, and whether releasing such a raw document serves his legacy or merely sensationalizes his decline. The visual element further complicates reactions. The performance was filmed for the CBS television special Elvis in Concert, broadcast after his death. Footage shows Elvis visibly sweating, his face puffy, his body barely resembling the lithe, energetic performer of earlier years. Yet his expression communicates genuine emotional investment in the song, creating a visual counterpoint as complex as the audio. Production choices add another layer of controversy. The posthumous release features heavy orchestration and backing vocals added after Elvis's death, creating a lush backdrop that some feel obscures the raw intimacy of the original performance, while others believe it provides necessary support for Elvis's compromised vocals. This studio enhancement creates a dispute about authenticity. Is the released version an accurate document of Elvis's final performances, or a posthumous attempt to camouflage his decline? Perhaps most poignantly, Unchained Melody raises uncomfortable questions about Elvis's awareness of his own condition. His decision to perform such a vocally challenging song suggests either a disconnect from his physical limitations or a defiant refusal to acknowledge them. Either interpretation compels listeners to confront the human reality behind the entertainment icon, a man struggling with mortality while still attempting to meet the expectations of his audience. Today, this version of Unchained Melody remains as divisive as ever. For some, it stands as Elvis's last masterpiece, a raw, emotionally naked performance that gains power precisely because of its imperfections. For others, it represents a tragic document that should never have been released, exploiting Elvis's decline rather than honoring his legacy. That both perspectives can be simultaneously valid perhaps explains why this recording continues to generate such passionate and contradictory responses, making it the most fundamentally divisive entry in Elvis Presley's remarkable catalog. Will future generations settle these debates once and for all? Or does the enduring power of Elvis's music lie precisely in its ability to generate such passionate disagreement? Can any artist truly be understood in a single unified interpretation? Or do the most compelling cultural figures inevitably create division along with devotion?